This is Gary Barnett, and you are listening to the Fulham Focus podcast. Enjoy.
Hello, welcome to the Fulham Focus podcast. My name's Matt Boisclair, and it was another draw for Fulham this evening as we pulled ourselves to within 6 points of Newcastle with a point at Turf Moor. There's 14 games left to catch up. Can we do it? It's Statto and Baldo with me tonight, and we'll also have a look ahead to Saturday's match with Sheffield United at the Cottage. So let's go.
Fulham.
Right, lads. Well, Fulham were unsurprisingly unchanged from the side that won at Goodison Park on Sunday. And for once, it was 4-4-2 versus 4-4-2, which is quite a rare occurrence these days, particularly in the Premier League. It was a pretty uninspiring and, dare I say, dull opening 20 minutes, though. I wouldn't say either side was playing with caution, but there just weren't any openings at all. Perhaps our best chance to get in behind the Burnley defence was when Loftus-Cheek failed to play Lookman in when we had 3-on-2 Statto. Just frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that a midweek game in the middle of February against Burnley at Turf Moor would be a boring, dull affair? Who would have thought it? But no, it was kind of a lot of half chances today that we saw. There wasn't kind of any clear chances. I'm thinking back to the game now, and I can't really recall us having tested Nick Pope at all. Really, like he made one or two simple saves, I think. So yeah, it was one of those types of games that, if we got half chances, we kind of needed to convert them into actual chances and try and take them. And that didn't materialise at all throughout the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, the game seemed to flow sort of as we expected it to flow. I don't think any of us were expecting this to be, a 4-3 goal fest. So we knew what we were getting ourselves in for was perhaps a little bit tougher and a little bit more of a slog than we were perhaps anticipating. But we knew what Burnley were going to be. We know that Fulham aren't exactly the greatest, aren't exactly the most thrilling side. So this is just basically par for the course for the most part.
Our passing wasn't as crisp as it usually is. We made a few mistakes, and Burnley did obviously pose that aerial threat, which they pose against every team. There's nothing anybody can do against that. You could be the best team in the world, but if Burnley get a corner, they've got a chance of scoring. But I didn't really feel like we were up against it at any point. There was a period in the first half where they kind of pinned us in and we weren't really getting many chances. But I don't know. I felt like we did okay, even though it was just quite a dull game. What do you think?
We basically did the job that we were basically set up to do. I know you said it, and we'll touch on it later, but so long as we didn't concede the first goal, so long as we didn't crumble, and so long as we, kept on the momentum, as it were, from Sunday's game, we always knew that we were going to be in with a chance, because we know that we don't score in great numbers. So as long as we can keep the opposition's numbers down, we're in with a chance. So we did that. It's just the fact that we couldn't really deliver on the in the other end.
Well, we almost did. We tried something different from a corner, didn't we, in the first half? It ultimately had the same result as almost every other corner we've had this season. Ademola Lookman picked out Mario Lemina on the edge of the box, and Mario Lemina put his foot through it and put the ball into orbit way over the crossbar. Statto, he had a lot of space, and although it was a big ask, could he have done a little bit better with that finish? I mean, he's no Paul Scholes, but I felt like he had enough time to control that a bit better.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you see a corner like that happen once every few seasons, I think. Obviously, Paul Scholes was the master of that, and it was always going to be a big ask. It was kind of a speculative effort, but it kind of showed to us that Burnley, it was a typical Burnley type game plan from them. They suffocated us, so we couldn't create our normal chances. They pinned us in our half, so when we got corners like this, the best we could do is trying things outside the box, both metaphorically and literally. And yeah, that's kind of just what Burnley do. They restrict teams, and we weren't able to play our usual type of game, unfortunately.
We had a huge let-off just before half-time as well. There was that low cross, which got a vital flick from the glove of Areola, which prevented Jay Rodriguez from sliding in and opening the scoring. It wasn't a save as such, but his intervention kept us in the game at half-time. And Bobby Zamora even said at half-time, it's little moments like that which make you think, could it be Fulham's night, Baldo?
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those heart-in-mouth moments that you think, oh, this could be one of those days we've done so well. Getting to half-time at 0-0 is probably where you would want us to be. Obviously, want us to be ahead, but as long as we haven't conceded, then we're fine. But it is just one of those, right, we know that even though they haven't posed much of a threat, they can still do it, in their, poo housing type manner. So you always have to be on your guard. And luckily Areola he as well didn't have the greatest of halves because he had that little bobbling moment from an early corner. So, but still proved that when we need him the most, he comes up clutch.
I don't know. I thought he did all right in the first half. I think, if anything, Anderson got in his way when he came out to try and grab the ball. But, thankfully, the ball didn't end up in the back of the net, and that was the main thing. At half-time, I was kind of thinking, all right, it's 0-0 at the moment, but I can see the way this game's going to go. Burnley will get a corner with about half an hour to go, swing it in, somebody massive will come up and lump it into the back of the net, and then maybe they'll add a second one towards the end. So it was a surprise when we did take the lead. Statto, what were you thinking at half-time?
Yeah, so I was kind of echoing the thoughts of Baldo a lot there, which is, kind of get to half-time at 0-0. The setup, we had the 4-4-2. It was working okay, but I couldn't see us scoring anytime soon. Couldn't see us conceding either. I think, at half-time, we needed to change things up a bit. I would have, and that's what happened. My thoughts were to kind of bring Bobby Decordova-Reid out wide rather than through the middle. We could use his energy out on that right to go against the Burnley left back, and we could bring Loftus-Cheek through the middle, use his physicality, get him into the game a bit more, because at right mid he kind of wasn't effective at all. And that's what happened, and it kind of worked at the beginning of the second half, and then obviously we did get that goal.
Yeah, and let's come on to the goal. I mean, it's hilarious, isn't it, that a team that never scores from corners scores a goal from a corner against a team renowned for scoring for corners. Baldo, talk me through the goal.
It was a huge slice of luck, is the only really way you can put it, because there is no way that Ola Aina is intending to chest that straight into the goal. He's probably thinking he wants to take a touch and maybe lay it off to someone, or maybe have a chance himself. But he just gets a lucky deflection. And then, was it Matt Lowton on the goal? It was someone on the goal line. Scuffs it and it goes in. My only question is, which goal was more hilarious to watch? Was it that one, or was it Matt Ritchie's up at Newcastle's? Because it's a bit of a tight one in my mind. But either way, just glad to have them both go in.
It was actually Robbie Brady on the line there, and he had an absolute stinker of a game. He came on as a sub in the first half for the injured Johan Berg Gudmundsson, conceded a corner within the first minute, picked up a yellow card, did that, and then got subbed off. It was a terrible performance from him, which was great for us, really.
Yeah, he was only on the pitch about 20 minutes, wasn't he? But I think, first of all, that didn't come off Ola Aina's chest. It came off his belly, came off his gut, if you can call it that. If you can say a professional footballer's got a gut. But
Chef Kikuchi would take you up on that.
Yeah, he definitely would, yeah. But he did adjust, and it came at him really quickly. But if you watch it in slow motion, he's turned his body, and he's meant to do it. It's come at him really quickly, but he's just directed the ball and diverted the ball towards goal. Second goal of the season, and fair play to him. It was right at the right time, just after half time. However, the last thing we needed after that was to concede, and that's exactly what happened. Was it poor defending from from Toshin, or was it just great skill from Rodriguez out on the right wing?
I would go with the former there and say it was quite poor defending. He kind of got nutmegged very easily. There's a lot of questionable there was a lot of questionable choices made by our defence there in the lead up to the goal. The positioning of them was all over the place. You don't normally see Burnley get a goal in the counter-attack like that, and Ashley Barnes had so much space. It was just a really weird thing that happened in a very quick space of time, and suddenly we're back to 1-0. It was just a weird goal to concede.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of blame that needs to go around. Adebayo, I think there is some level of good skill from Jay Rodriguez for that. You have to give him some credit for that. But at the same time, Adebayo could have done better. Probably shouldn't have tried to dive in like that. And at the same time, I saw someone on Twitter having a go at Anderson for his positioning, keeping Ashley Barnes onside. Because I know as soon as the goal went in the VAR world, I saw wait, because it was a pretty close one. But again, Anderson's positioning there, if he'd have just stepped up a little bit, keep Ashley Barnes offside, then maybe we'd have been able to get away with it. So I think there's a lot of blame that needs to go around.
All right, well, after that, Burnley were then on top, so we made a change on the hour. On came Anguissa for Mario Lemina, which I felt was quite a good move, as Lemina was giving the ball away a fair bit. But he wasn't the only one giving the ball away. our passing was particularly poor once Burnley equalised, wasn't it? And then they had that spell, Statto.
Yeah, for sure. I thought bringing Anguissa was the right move. As I mentioned at half-time, moving to a kind of a midfield three was kind of the right move. And Lamina, he wasn't having the best of games. So I thought, it would be a good chance for Anguissa to come on. He's good at retaining the ball. He's good at bringing the ball forward. So I thought, we'd see more of that. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But yeah, in general, the passing was just well off today. I'm trying to find what our pass accuracy was. I think it was in the 60s or something like that, which we're normally up in the high 70s. So that goes to show just how poor everyone was today. I don't think anyone had a particularly good game for us in the attack nor the defence. So yeah, it was just a scrappy game.
I think for the most part, though, that came down to what Burnley were doing. Yeah, as we said, we know what Burnley are. We know they're a stout defence. And as soon as they got the equaliser and their job was effectively done, because as the guys on Sky were saying, a draw works better for them than it does for us. They set out to frustrate us, and credit to them, it worked incredibly well. That's why they were pressuring us, and that's why our passes were going all over the place. So there is probably some level of it comes down to us, but I think you have to give credit to Burnley as well for putting us in those positions.
They are very good at home, although we seem to be quite good away from home now. I think, was that our 6th game unbeaten away from home in a row?
Yeah, something along those lines. And Sky said something like 60, this is the Statto area, but 61% of our points this season have come away from home, something along those lines. So it's certainly a change of pace from where we used to be in the Premier League, where we'd, 05, 06, where we only won one game, or we didn't win a game away from home, or we'd only win one. So we've improved, but just not improved enough.
Yeah, the 61% thing isn't that much of a surprise when you consider that we've only won once at home all season, though, which has to change. That has to change this weekend. Anyway, we'll come on to that shortly. Cavallero was next to come on for Bobby Reid Statto, 23 minutes to go. By now, Ruben Loftus-Cheek had moved from the right to up front alongside Josh Maja. So Cav played down the right, and he looked a bit better in his preferred position, I thought. I thought he came on and had quite an impact. He dug out a decent chance for Loftus-Cheek, but his header kind of came at him a bit too quickly and he skewed it wide. How do you think Cavallero did?
Yeah, for sure. I think he was a bit of a bright spark when he came on, which is not what you expect from Cavallero in recent weeks. But like I said, it's probably because we're playing him out in the wing rather than up top. When he came on, he was running at players, he was taking them on, he was getting crosses in, and it was good to see. And I think it's quite unfortunate that that's the only attacking change we could make given the sub choices we had on our bench. We had 5 defenders and then Anguissa, Onimo and Cavallero. And it's, you can question the whole getting rid of Cabano and Kamara, but I don't think that would have made a difference anyway. But there is a slight concern there that we may be a bit light in attacking options off the bench now. Obviously, we have Mitrovic coming back, but that's only one extra player. So, for me, there's a small concern that when there'll be other games like this where we're trying to find a winner and we're trying to change things up, and there tends to be limited options from the bench.
I do think that at some stage, sorry, Fred, I didn't use to say Mitrovic options off the bench. I do think there will come a stage where Mitrovic and Maja will play together, personally. I think, if we're playing with this 4-4-2, it does make sense to have a centre forward and a striker, as it were, playing together. So the options off the bench aren't really going to change. It's still going to be the likes of Cavallero and maybe Bobby Reid coming off the bench. It's not going to be that drastic of a change, at least in my mind.
Sometimes those sort of players are quite handy to have at your disposal on the bench, because they're the sort of players that can come on and add a bit of pace, a bit more flair to the attack, and potentially change a game, as opposed to the likes of Mitrovic coming on, which I've never really been a fan of that sort of player coming on to change a game. He's the sort of player who should be starting if he's fit. But anyway, we've done that debate to death. Speaking about who else was on our bench, it was Anthony Robinson who was the last substitute that came on. With about 10 minutes to go, he came on for Kenny Tete. I can only assume that Kenny Tete was absolutely shattered, as he'd had a fairly decent game, in my mind.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of what Baldo mentioned in the team chat. All these subs kind of like for like, but then you look at the options and what else can Parker do to change things up. So, we brought on Cavallero for Reid, right winger for a right winger. bought an Anguissa for Lamina, centre mid for a centre mid, and then we bought on a fullback for a fullback. Admittedly, there was a small tactical change there in that Aina went over to right back and then Robinson slotted in at left back. But, what else could he have done? Maybe he could have bought on Onima for Anguissa, Onima for Loftus-Cheek, because Loftus-Cheek wasn't having the best game. But there wasn't really much else he could have done really there. So, yeah, it was just kind of a like-for-like change. Good to get Robinson some minutes again because he's missed out the last game. But, yeah, it was just a bit of a uninspired change.
I think I'd have been more inclined to leave Tete on. I thought he was getting up the pitch and he was looking likely to create something. I mean, I think he worked quite well with Cavallero when Cavallero came on. And I don't know, there was 10 minutes to go. The chances are it wouldn't have made any difference anyway, but I would have liked to have seen him stay on.
Definitely. And like I said, you said you think he might have been shattered, but he didn't look too tired to me. Maybe Parker has one eye on the Sheffield United game coming up the weekend, wants to make sure he's fit and firing for that. But hey, we just don't know.
It's 3 games in 7 days, isn't it? So, yeah, it's quite a grueling schedule, especially when you need to be picking up points in all these games. There was a big chance for Ademola Lookman, who'd had quite a quiet game or ineffective game, let's say, on the left. Big chance for him towards the end, about a minute to go. I think Josh Madger squeezed the ball over to him just inside the penalty box at an angle. And he had quite a bit of time and he failed to hit the target. He was trying to bend it round the keeper into the top corner, but he ended up bending it into the stand. That was a big chance and a real chance to win it, Baldo, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those where it goes down as, should have done better sort of thing. He had the time. It wasn't as if he was totally rushed. And there was the option, I don't know, I really only saw one replay, but there was also the option to play it across into Madger in the box. Maybe caught in two minds, but yeah, should have done better in either sense. At least test the goalkeeper in that situation. That's all we can ask for.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, let's come on to a man of the match then, if you can pick one. I think I'd give it to Kenny Tete myself, which is why I was so surprised that he ended up going off. Any advances on Kenny Tete?
It's a tough one. As I mentioned, I don't think anyone played particularly well. No one played particularly bad, but it wasn't kind of one that excelled. Maybe Aina, because he did score and he had a fairly solid game at left back and then moved up to right back. And of course, Harrison Reed, he just did his usual job of running around and doing his job as usual. So I think for me, they're the top 3 candidates for man of the match.
I'll stick with Tete. I think, as Statto said, no one really stood out, but Tete just seemed to be solid. I think in a newspaper rating, they'd all get 6s, and you wouldn't really be shocked with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And a Scott Parker rating from you both, please.
On the same line, I'll go with a 6. I think you get some credit for keeping the starting lineup the same. Some of it is sort of forced on him because of injuries and what have you. But I do think the substitutions and the way he managed the game wasn't great. I know we've said that he didn't have much option, but the 3 subs were in effect like for like. So there wasn't really any attacking emphasis, even if it was something like if he'd have brought Cavallero on for Aina earlier in the game. So you get rid of a fullback, bringing on a winger. Just anything like that to give you more of an attacking feel to the game rather than basically 3 similar positions would have got more credit. So I'm going to give a 6.
Do you think that he just didn't want to lose the game rather than wanted to go all out and win it? I
think there is some element to that, but you hope it isn't, because we are pretty much in every 7 points. Was different at the start of the game. We are in, and especially in a game like this, these are games where we are in must-win territory rather than must-not lose.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this game is. Not only because Burnley are kind of down there in the mix, but just because of we've still got an outside chance of catching them. Plus, you look ahead after the Sheffield United and the Crystal Palace game, and it's Liverpool, Man City. So very, very tricky games. Statto, how about you? What are you giving Scott Parker out of 10 for this?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, after the high of that Everton game, we came into this game trying to and expecting a win because, we've never won a Goodison Park and we got a win. So then it's like, we're going to get that win at Turf Moor now against, not the best Burnley side. And, that was our 10th draw of the season now. And you can kind of you can kind of categorise our draws into either, the 2-point lost category or a point gained. And, the Liverpool, the Tottenham draw, they're definitely the point gained. And then, they got the Brighton and the Southampton ones, which are probably 2 points dropped. And I think this one probably falls more into the whole 1 point gained category on the face of the game. We didn't really do enough to try and win, but we didn't particularly look like losing either. So for that reason, I think, like a 6, 7 out of 10 for Parker. He didn't do anything wrong. I think he was limited by the options he had on the bench to try and influence it and change it for the win. I think he was trying to go for a win, but it's always going to be tough to get a second goal against a stubborn Burnley side at Turf Moor.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we say this sort of stuff, or I say this sort of stuff all the time, but on another day, Adebayo gets his leg an inch or two in a different position and stops that ball from going past him, and they don't get that equaliser, and Scott Parker can't play that game for him. I think the way that we set up was all right. To go ahead at Burnley was quite an achievement. I didn't expect us to take the lead, certainly not that quickly in the second half. Maybe midway through the first half or something. So. Yeah, I definitely give him a 6 as well. I think had that chance from Lookman gone in at the end, we're probably looking at 8, aren't we? But it didn't. So, as I always say, this is only a bit of fun. We're just trying to pull some content, a bit more content out of the game by analysing what the manager could and couldn't have done. But I'm not sure what else he could have done today. So 6 is maybe a bit harsh, but we wanted 3 points and we only got 1. So them's the breaks. All right, so that's Burnley out the way for the season, thank God, or Burnley away out the way at least. So it's on to Sheffield United at home next.
Fulham.
Right, Statto, you've got some stats for us, I believe.
I do indeed. And as the bottom team in the Premier League, it's pretty grim reading for Sheffield United. Recently I did the stats for West Ham, and they were probably one of the most improved teams in the Premier League from last season. And Sheffield United are almost kind of the polar opposites of this. So, for context, last season they finished 9th. They're getting 1.4 points per game, scoring at least 1 goal a game, conceding just 1 goal, and they kept clean sheets in 34% of their games. This season, at 24 games, however, it couldn't be more different. They're now getting just 0.5 points per game, scoring just 0.6, less than a goal a game, and conceding a whopping 1.7 goals per game. And they've kept clean sheets in just 4%, which equates to just 1 game this season. So I think there's kind of an expectation that we should at least score 1 goal here, because if we don't, then there's something wrong with us. Looking at kind of their record on the road so far, they've lost 10 out of 12 away games this season, accumulating only 4 points from those other 2 games. And they've only scored 6 goals in away games this season and have conceded 22. Although, despite being the bottom team in the Premier League, their defensive stats, they're conceding a lot of goals, but it's not actually the worst defensive record out there in the Premier League. You've got West Brom, who are conceding far more goals. They have a far worse goal difference. And if we look into their stats in more detail, they rank 8th in terms of shots faced per game, with 13.1 shots. For comparison, we're 10th in this regard, so we face an average of about 11.8 shots per game. So it's a similar amount of shots. They just kind of let a few more in. They rank 3rd, so quite highly in terms of fouls committed per game of 12.4. So I can see us getting quite a lot of free kicks. And although we scored from a set piece against Burnley, we really need to be kind of converting and getting more goals from set pieces. I think this game could be the perfect opportunity for that. And also, quite interestingly, they're joint top with Fulham in terms of yellow cards acquired per game. So we average 1.9 yellow cards per game, which is the highest in the league, as do Sheffield United. So, there's lots of opportunities there for us to score. And as mentioned, we kind of have to score because the stats show it, and they're also the bottom team, and it's a must-win game. So if we look into kind of their key players this season, their goalkeeper, Ramsdale, he's played every game for them this season, which means all 40 goals that they've conceded so far are conceded by him. He's made a lot of questionable errors since his big money move from Bournemouth. In defence, which is where they were so good at last year, they've obviously lost Jack O'Connell since the start of the season. And they've also, by the looks of things, they've got a nasty injury to one of the other key centre-backs in John Egan, who got a horrible injury against West Ham on Monday. So that's a good big bonus for us. I think we can expect to see Chris Basham line up in that defence along with Ethan Ampadu, who Bordeaux was a big fan of due to the whole Welsh connection. Big thumbs up from him there. And this could, because of all their defensive injuries, they could kind of be swayed away from their 5 at the back and go to a 4 at the back, which would be kind of unheard of from Sheffield United in the Premier League. They've always stuck with 5 at the back. They've always stuck with that overlapping centre-backs. So they've got quite a big injury crisis, and we need to kind of take advantage of that. And then in attack, this is kind of where a lot of their problems lie. They don't really have the most mobile and agile strikers. Their top scorer is a 33-year-old David McGoldrick, who's probably a championship striker at best at the moment. He's got 5 goals. He's used kind of that big target man who holds up and brings others into play. And then the second top scorer is a 35-year-old Billy Sharp, and he's got 3 goals and 2 of those were penalties, including one against us in the reverse fixture earlier this season. And then, their big money signing in Ryan Brewster, he hasn't even scored a goal or got an assist yet. So, it really hasn't clicked for them in attack. And, we should be able to deal with them comfortably on Saturday.
Well, let's hope so. So the harsh reality of the fact for us is that we've got 14 games left to rescue ourselves, and we're currently 6 points behind Newcastle. Can we do it?
I think we can. And in a weird way, the result tonight doesn't really change much. Because if you look at it, we were 7 points and we have the goal difference advantage on Newcastle. So really, if we were to catch them, we only needed 2 wins and 1 draw rather than 3 wins. So in effect, the job itself hasn't changed all that much. We still, in this 3 games to catch them up, 2 wins, 1 draw, we've got the draw. We'd have wanted to win, but we got the draw. So our job really hasn't changed. And we've got some favourable games coming up, let's put it that way. Sheffield United, as Arthur said, we should, emphasis on should, be able to deal with them quite comfortably. But you know what we're like. And then after that is Crystal Palace, who seem to be on a terrible slump right now. And then Newcastle don't exactly have the best of fixtures. So if we are going to catch up, we can do it. But it's these next 2 games are really going to define what sort of chance we have. Because after that, I think it's Man City and Liverpool afterwards. So if we're going to do it, it's these 2 games. Otherwise, that's it.
Are Newcastle the team to catch those, Statto, do you think? All right, they're the nearest to us at the moment, but do you see anybody else getting sucked down into this? Because we play before Newcastle. It's way too early in the season to be talking like this, but let's talk like it anyway. We play before Newcastle this weekend. So let's say, for argument's sake, we do beat Sheffield United. That gap is then only 3 points. We've still got to play Newcastle on the last day of the season, which could be a shit or bust game, couldn't it? So do you see anybody else being dragged into this, or is it them?
Yeah, so I think at the start of this week after that Everton win, everyone was kind of daydreaming that by the time that Newcastle play again, we could be within 1 point of them if we got wins at Burnley and Sheffield United. Hasn't turned out like that, but it's not the end of the world. There's still 14 games to go. And obviously, as you mentioned, we've got Newcastle on the last day of the season, so everyone's kind of thinking, if we can catch up to them, it's either them or us. And I'm just looking at the table now. I'm looking at the other teams. You've got Brighton, who are now unbeaten in 5 games with those 2 wins. You think that they have enough to get away. Burnley today, they were nothing special, and you'd think they could get drawn into it. But then at the same time, a few more kind of tough turf more performances from them could see them pulled to safety. But you never know. It could all kind of fall apart for them. Crystal Palace, our team I'm looking at, they are on 29 points. They are 10 points ahead of us, yes. But they're in terrible form at the moment. They're just losing. They've lost 2 on the bounce now. They are without Zaha. I don't know for how long they are without him. The longer they are without him, the better for us. I'm not sure if we'll be back in time when we play them in 2 weeks' time. We'd like to hope he is, because if he is, I think that's a nice, easy win for us, because without him, they're nothing. And also, one to kind of keep an eye on, I don't think there'll be any trouble, but Southampton now, they've lost 6 on the bounce. The longest they've lost, it's the longest run of games they've lost in a row. They're on 29 points. I don't think they'll be, they'll be down there with us. I think they'll kind of get their shit together and Danny Ings will start scoring again. But yeah, whilst there's teams within 10 points of us, I think there's every chance that they could fall into the relegation battle. But for them to do that, it's all on us as the 18th place team to pull other teams into the battle by getting points and catching up to them.
Yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, if we win 14 on the bounce, then we're safe. But the fact that we've only won 3 all season probably doesn't bode well for winning those last 14 games in a row. But anyway, let's start off with this Sheffield United game on Saturday then. Baldo, any changes would you make to the starting lineup?
The only change I would make, and I've sort of hinted at it, and it does depend on whether or not Alexander Mitrovic is back, because we know he's going through COVID protocol. We don't know when he's going to be back, yada, yada, yada. If he is back, I think he starts, because I think those brief spells that he gave showed that he is worthy of a place in the side. So I think he will start depending on that. That will probably be the only change I envision making if he's fit. Other than that, even including the bench, will be the same. So I don't see why Parker would change it, and I also don't see how Parker could change it, just because of the options that we have available to us, or lack thereof.
How about for you, Statto?
Yeah, I think I agree mostly with what Baldo says. You keep the defence. Maybe, there's a claim for Robinson to come back into the team, so we have a natural left footer in that left-back position. Midfield, Lamina, Reid, they were solid in that midfield two together. I'd be quite happy to see the same starting 11, but in terms of tactics, I'd like to quite see Bobby Reid go out on the right and Loftus-Cheek in the middle. I don't think Loftus-Cheek is a right midfielder. We all know he's not a winger. He's very much a centre midfielder. He's a good centre midfielder, and if we play him in his position, I think he will excel a lot more than how he's playing at the moment. So I'd like to see that. Have him play either as kind of a second striker behind Madja or a bit further back in that number 10 role, and have Bobby Reid out wide. I think that's the only kind of difference I'd like to see on Saturday.
Okay, let's wrap up then. Let's go for a score prediction, Baldo.
I think the easiest part of it is predicting Sheffield United 0. I think we can get that much pretty much out of the way. The only thing is, how many are we going to score? I don't think it's going to be that many. I think we can produce something, but we haven't really produced in numbers most of the part of the season. So I'll go for a 2-0, personally. I'll go for a 2-0.
Okay, I'm going to go for 2-1, just simply because you've just said that Sheffield United won't score. So they're definitely going to score. Now you said that. And I expect it will be that Ryan Brewster that scores after Statto said that he hasn't scored or got an assist yet. So let's go with that.
If only there were a word to describe that sort of feeling, but we're not allowed to say that on this podcast, are we?
How about you, Statto?
Yeah, so this is a game that we definitely have to win. The Everton game gave us that great momentum that we need to carry forward. I don't think the Burnley game's taken that momentum away in any way. Much like the Leicester, like when we got that Leicester win, there was kind of that emphasis of we need to kick on and get some wins, get some points on the board, and that didn't quite happen. We got a lot of draws, but no wins. So this time around, we got that Everton win. We need to kind of carry that on with more wins, and what better way to do it than to beat the 20th place team at the moment? And we have to get that win, because I think if we don't, then that could be one nail in the coffin for us, because if we can't beat the bottom team in the Premier League, then what hope do we have of staying up? So in that regards, I think it would just be a nice little 2-0 win. We're not scoring. We're not a free scoring team at the moment. So I can't see us getting 3-4-0. A 2-0 will be a nice result and a nice win for us.
You've got to remember, Sheffield United, not so long ago, beat Manchester United at Old Trafford just a couple of weeks ago. So this isn't going to be the walk in the park. That
They did. And, it's also worth pointing out, there's a stat that I forgot to mention in that, a lot of their games, they've only lost by one goal here we are. It's 6 of their 19 defeats this season have come from a goal margin of more than 1. So, the remaining 13, they've been 1-0s, 2-1s. So, for the team in the bottom of the Premier League, they haven't actually been playing that bad. They've just been a bit unlucky and they just lack that bit of Premier League quality. I don't think come the end of the season they will finish bottom. I think West Brom are the bottom team, and Sheffield United will probably come 19th. So, like I said, they are the bottom team. We expect to beat them, but they're still quite a decent outfit. That'll be tough to break down, and we shouldn't kind of go into that game expecting a win. We still need to kind of be cautious. We need to be aware, and we need to be tackling it like any other game. And I think Parker knows that. I think the players know that as well. So I don't think that's too much of a concern.
Like you say, though, it is must win. You can't go winning at Everton. You can't go winning at Leicester and then slip up against the bottom team if you're serious about staying up. We've still got enough time to do this. I thought that it was game over a couple of weeks ago, and it seems we're still in it. So we've got to see this team off on Saturday to start with. All right, well, that's that then. The next show will be out on Monday morning, where we'll have a look back over the Sheffield United game. So speak to you then. Cheers.